If you saw us from the outside, you'd probably think we were a normal, sentimental mother-daughter pair getting ready for a beautiful vineyard wedding. I'm 58 years old, and for the last 15 years, I've told myself that walking my daughter Emma down the aisle would be the one moment that made all the sleepless nights, the bills, the loneliness, and the quiet little heartbreaks worth it. I raised her alone. I paid for everything. I was there when no one else was. And then one evening, at my own kitchen table, my only child looked me in the eye and said very calmly, "Mom, I want you and Dad's wife to walk me down the aisle together." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. My ears rang the way they did the day the doctor told me my ex-husband had someone else. "Sorry," I managed, my fingers tightening around my mug. "You want what?" Emma swallowed, twisting the napkin in her hands. "I want both of you, you and Nicole. It would mean a lot to Dad, to her, to our blended family." Blended family. Funny phrase for a man who cheated his way out of ours. My ex-husband Daniel walked out when Emma was 11. He moved an hour away, remarried a woman named Nicole, had a son with her, and, for years, visited Emma like she was a distant cousin instead of his daughter. I stayed. I worked. I showed up. Now his wife, the woman who came after the affair, after the divorce, after the custody hearings, wanted to share the single moment I'd held on to as mine. And my daughter was seriously asking me to let her. I tried to breathe slowly to keep my voice from shaking. "Emma," I said, "I've been there since the beginning. Nicole has known you for, 7 years?" "Mom, please don't do this," she whispered. "She's been really supportive. Dad says it would mean a lot to her if—" "So this is about what would mean a lot to her?" I asked. "Or what would mean a lot to you?" She flinched, and in that tiny movement, I saw it, the pressure behind her eyes, the guilt sitting on her shoulders, the invisible hand of her father and his new wife gripping her from the other side. I should have stopped there. I should have swallowed the hurt and asked more questions. Instead, something bitter and exhausted slipped out before I could catch it. "If she's important enough to walk you down the aisle with me," I said quietly, "maybe she and your father should be important enough to pay for half this wedding, too." Silence. Emma stared at me like I'd slapped her. The truth was, I'd already paid the venue deposit, the catering deposit, the photographer, and the dress that cost more than my first car. I'd been saving for this day for years. Daniel and Nicole hadn't offered a cent. But that one sentence, one tired, honest sentence, shattered something between us. Emma pushed her chair back. "I can't believe you're making this about money," she said, eyes shining. "I thought you were better than this." And just like that, the proudest day of my life turned into a battlefield I didn't recognize, one where my ex-husband, his new wife, and even my own daughter seemed ready to push me out of the picture I'd spent decades fighting to stay inside. I had no idea that asking them to contribute would expose everything they'd really been saving for. And it wasn't just their son's future. It was their image, their control, their version of the story. And I was about to blow a hole straight through it. If you asked anyone who knew me back then, they'd tell you I was the kind of mother who didn't just do her best. I reinvented myself from the ground up because my daughter needed me to. I was 21 when Emma was born. Young, terrified, still learning how to be a person myself, let alone someone's mother. Daniel and I weren't stable, but I clung to the idea that we could be, that we were. For years, I believed we were building something real, a home, a family, a future. But the day I found the messages, those soft, flirty texts from a woman I didn't know at the time, everything cracked open. They had been seeing each other for months before I confronted him. He cried, apologized, promised nothing had gone far. But the betrayal was already lodged under my ribs. The divorce dragged on for 8 long months, and with every court date, every affidavit, every night of explaining to Emma why Daddy wasn't coming home, my heart hardened. The day custody was settled, Daniel looked me in the eye and said he needed space to grow. What he meant was space to build a new life with the woman who would later become his wife, Nicole. Emma stayed with me full time. Not because Daniel fought for her, not because he negotiated passionately, but because he stepped back, palms lifted, as if fatherhood was something he could set down when it became inconvenient. I became mother, father, caretaker, tutor, chauffeur, everything, and I did it alone. I learned to braid hair from late-night YouTube videos. I mastered every brand of crayon and watercolor pencil because school art projects demanded them. I was the one at every parent-teacher conference, every recital, every science fair, whispering encouragement into Emma's ear. And when she got her first period at 13, sobbing in a school bathroom stall, she called me. Not Daniel, me. I drove to the store in a panic, bought every product on the shelf, and sat outside the bathroom door reading instructions from my phone like I was studying for a final exam. Meanwhile, Daniel sent a birthday card that year with $50 inside and called it support. Nicole entered the picture soon after, first as the woman who replaced me, then as the woman he married. When Emma was 19, she decided she wanted to rebuild a relationship with him. I didn't stand in her way. If anything, I encouraged her. If she wanted to try, I wouldn't be the one holding her back. But it was never just Daniel she was reconnecting with. Nicole was always there, bubbly, stylish, quick to give advice, faster to take credit. Over the years, they grew closer. Lunches, shopping trips, shared interests I never had time for when I was too busy keeping the lights on and food on the table. And I'll admit it, sometimes it stung to see my daughter bond with the woman who came after my life fell apart. But Emma deserved to feel loved from every direction, even if some of those directions cut deeper than I liked. Still, there were signs, tiny ones at first. Comments Nicole made in that soft, sugary voice of hers. Emma, sweetie, your mom can be a little old school, can't she? I think your mom forgets you're an adult now. You know you can always talk to me about things your mom wouldn't understand. Polite digs, elegant wedges, just enough to create space. And Daniel, always eager to rewrite history, would chime in. Your mom takes things too personally. She doesn't really get modern families. She's just emotional. But Emma never told me those things. I only learned much later. When Emma met Ryan, her sweet, steady, mild-mannered fiancé, I thought things would settle. I thought she'd remember who her constant parent was, who had stitched together every broken moment of her childhood. And when she asked if I could help with the wedding costs, I didn't hesitate. I didn't bargain. I didn't ask for anything in return. I said yes, because I'd been saving for her since the year Daniel left, scrimping quietly while pretending it wasn't breaking me. The venue, the catering, the photographer, the dress, every deposit with my name on it. I thought this wedding would be my moment, ours. But then one dinner, one sentence, one impossible request. Emma, my baby girl, asking me to share the center of that aisle with the woman who stepped into the life I spent decades building. And that's when everything began to fracture. Looking back now, the tension didn't explode all at once. It grew in tiny, almost invisible increments, like a hairline crack spreading across glass until suddenly the whole thing shatters. It started with Emma's tone. Not disrespectful, never that, just cautious, guarded. The way she'd pause before answering my questions, as if mentally checking what version of the story she was allowed to share. The way she'd say, Mom, Nicole thinks, or Dad said, before remembering she used to say I said. A mother knows when a daughter is pulling away. Not in rebellion. This wasn't the slamming door teenage distance I knew how to handle. This was subtler, softer, a quiet shifting of weight from one foot to another, as if testing where the emotional floor was warmest. Nicole and Daniel made sure it was warm on their side. I first noticed it when Emma showed me photos of dresses. She'd scroll through her phone, talking excitedly, then stop, hesitate, and swipe past an image too quickly. Wait, I'd say. Go back, I didn't see that one. She'd force a smile. Oh, that? It's nothing. Just something Nicole liked. Nicole liked. It took everything in me not to ask why Nicole's opinion mattered so much in choosing a dress I was paying for. But I bit my tongue. I'd spent years biting it. After the affair, after the divorce, after every missed weekend and empty mailbox, I had mastered the art of swallowing pain quietly. The more we planned, the more I saw the pattern. Daniel inserting himself where he'd never been present before. Nicole offering suggestions that somehow turned into expectations. Emma caught like a bird between two tall hands, trying not to offend either palm pressing inward. One evening, Emma came over to finalize the reception layout. We were sitting at my dining table, the same one where she once did homework while I cooked dinner, and she kept glancing at her phone, screen lighting up every 3 minutes. Finally, I asked, Sweetheart, do you need to take that? No, she said too quickly. It's just, Nicole wants my input on something. Decorations. And Dad is, well, Dad. There it was, the tremor in her voice. A sound I recognized from when she was small and worried she'd disappoint someone she desperately wanted approval from. Emma, I said gently, you don't have to answer them right now. This is your wedding. They can wait. But she couldn't, she replied, over and over. I watched her thumb move as she typed, her brow creasing deeper each time. Whatever Nicole was saying, it wasn't supportive. Whatever Daniel was saying, it wasn't calming her. I didn't have to see the messages to know that. So, Emma said, after a long exhale, I've been thinking about the ceremony, about who walks me down the aisle. My stomach tightened. She spoke so softly, like she knew she was placing a landmine on the table. I want it to be inclusive, she continued, like a reflection of my whole family. Whole family, as if they had been there all along. I didn't interrupt. I didn't breathe. I want you and Nicole to walk me down together. The words landed like cold water poured on bare skin. Not Daniel, Nicole. Not her father, his replacement. Not the man who left, his new wife. I tried to keep my face neutral, but the ache seeped through. Emma, I said, have you always wanted that? Or is someone telling you that's what would make them happy? Her eyes flickered away. That's not fair, she whispered. But she didn't say no. She didn't say it was her own idea. And that silence, thin as tissue paper, was all the answer I needed. After she left that night, something settled uneasily in my chest. A heaviness. A dread. Not because of the request itself, but because of the pressure behind it. The invisible tug of war I'd suddenly realized had been happening for months. Daniel and Nicole weren't just becoming part of Emma's life. They were rewriting their roles in it, and mine. They were reshaping family history, smoothing out the edges of abandonment and betrayal, painting themselves as pillars instead of visitors. And Emma, sweet, loyal, eager to please Emma, was caught between two versions of her own story. Mine, built on years of sacrifice. Theirs, built on convenience and charm. I didn't know then that this was just the first tremor. The real quake was still coming. The shift didn't come with shouting. It didn't come with slammed doors or broken plates. It came with a single, deceptively calm conversation that began over dinner. 3 weeks before the wedding, Emma arrived at my house wearing a soft cream sweater, her hair tucked behind her ears the way she used to wear it when she wanted to seem composed, even if she wasn't. She carried a binder full of wedding notes, tabs sticking out in soft pastels. But the moment she walked into the kitchen, I knew something was wrong. She was too quiet, too careful, like she was stepping over emotional glass. Long day? I asked gently, setting down the pot roast. She nodded. Yeah, a lot of decisions. People keep texting me. People. She meant Daniel. She meant Nicole. We sat down, just the two of us. She pushed her food around her plate, barely eating, and I pretended not to watch her hands shake. We went through last-minute details, the caterer's adjusted menu, seating arrangements, and for a moment things felt normal, familiar, safe. Then she took a breath. It wasn't a big breath, just slightly too deep, too deliberate, the kind people take before detonating a truth they don't want to say. So, about the ceremony, she said. There it was. I placed my fork down carefully. Okay, I whispered. Emma's eyes darted to the binder, then to me. I've been thinking about the walk down the aisle. My pulse tightened. The refrigerator hummed loudly behind us. The clock on the wall ticked like it was keeping time with my heartbeat. I want both you and Nicole to walk me down, she said finally. Silence. Not the kind that fills a room. The kind that hollows it out. When I didn't answer, she kept going, as if rehearsed. She's been really supportive, and Dad thinks it would be meaningful for everyone. It would show that we're a modern family, that we've all healed. Healed? I was the one who had sewn the wounds shut. He was the one who made them. I forced my voice to stay gentle. Emma, sweetheart, is this what you truly want? Yes, she said instantly. Too instantly. Look at me, I murmured. She didn't. That told me everything. I inhaled slowly. Emma, I've been there since the beginning. Since you were born. Since your father left. Since... She cut in, defensive, voice trembling. Mom, please don't make this harder. I'm trying to include everyone. I don't want people to feel excluded. People. Nicole was not people. She was one person. One person who had stepped into the life I built. And what about me feeling excluded? I asked softly. Emma blinked fast. Mom, stop. You're being dramatic. Dramatic. The word hit harder than she knew. I swallowed, trying to stay steady. I've planned this wedding with you. I've paid for everything. And now you want to give the one moment I dreamed of sharing with you to someone who's known you less than a decade? She flinched. I'm not taking anything from you. You're asking me to share something you can only do once, I whispered. The tension stretched thin between us, trembling. So I made a mistake. A single, exhausted, human mistake. If Nicole is important enough to walk you down the aisle, I said quietly, maybe she and your father should be important enough to pay for part of the wedding. Emma froze. She stared at me like I'd turned into someone she didn't recognize. And then, softly, painfully, she said, I didn't think you were that kind of person. I felt it like a slap, the kind that leaves an invisible bruise. You're making this about money, she whispered. This is supposed to be about love. Sweetheart, I'm pointing out a truth. If they want a bigger role, they need to take responsibility too. No, she snapped suddenly, standing up. Mom, you're twisting this. You're jealous or threatened or something. I can't do this right now. Emma, she grabbed her coat, eyes shining. I just wanted to include everyone. You made it ugly. And she left. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't finish dinner. She didn't look back. The door closed with a soft click, but the silence that followed was brutal. I stood alone in my kitchen, staring at 2 plates of untouched food, wondering how we had ended up here, how Daniel and Nicole's wants had somehow drowned out everything I had done for 26 years, how I had become the villain in a story I wrote with my own hands. That night, she didn't answer my texts. The next day, nothing. 3 days in total, nothing but silence. And that silence was the loudest sign yet. This wedding wasn't just pulling Emma away from me. Daniel and Nicole were pulling her into their version of reality. And if I didn't confront this now, I might lose my daughter's heart forever. For the first 24 hours after Emma walked out, I told myself she just needed space. 48 hours later, I was replaying every word of our conversation like an autopsy. By the 3rd day, silence felt like a verdict. I kept checking my phone, rereading messages I didn't send, deleting drafts that sounded too desperate, too apologetic, too much like I was the one who had done something wrong. That was the part that hurt the most, not the request she'd made, but the way she looked at me afterward, like I had betrayed her. It made me question everything. Had I said the wrong thing? Had I pushed too hard? Had I misread her feelings? Was I being unreasonable? Was I being selfish? But every time I thought those words, another image rose to the surface. 13-year-old Emma crying in a school bathroom. 17-year-old Emma sobbing the night her first boyfriend broke her heart. 11-year-old Emma sitting on the edge of her bed the morning Daniel didn't show up for visitation. Again. I had been there. I had been it. Her entire support system, her safety net, her constant. So why was I suddenly the villain? The thought made my stomach twist. When Emma finally called on the 4th day, I answered immediately, breath catching. Mom, she said, voice small, strained. Sweetheart, I whispered, I've been worried. I know, I'm sorry, I needed time. A pause stretched between us. Neither of us knew where to begin. Then she said, Mom, I'm under so much pressure. From who? I didn't ask because I already knew. Dad keeps calling me, she continued, and Nicole thinks I didn't explain things well. She said you might have misunderstood what I meant. Ah, there it was. Misunderstood. The polite way of saying I was being unreasonable. And Dad says you brought up money to punish them. He said you're trying to control the wedding because you're paying for it. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. Daniel had always been skilled at rewriting the story until he looked noble. Emma, I said softly, I wasn't punishing anyone. I was asking for balance. I know, she replied quickly. Too quickly, like she was afraid to contradict me. But Mom, I can't keep fighting with them. They're so hurt. Nicole cried, and Dad said he felt excluded. He felt excluded? I repeated, stunned. He left you, Emma. He excluded himself from half your childhood. Silence. Painful, cold silence. I heard her inhale shakily. Please don't say things like that. The panic in her voice wasn't about the truth. It was about loyalty. Loyalty she was terrified of dividing. All at once, the reality clicked into place. My daughter wasn't choosing them over me. She was trying to keep the peace in a war she never asked for. Emma, I murmured, you don't have to protect them from their own guilt. Mom, stop, she whispered. Please, you're making this worse. Worse. There it was again, the weight of blame. I steadied my breathing, even as my chest tightened. Can we meet in person? I asked. Not to argue, just to talk. After a long pause, she said yes. The coffee shop. We met at a little cafe near her apartment. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tense, hands wrapped around her cup like she was holding on to it for warmth. I spoke softly, gently. No accusations, no frustration, just truth. Emma, I began, I want to explain why that moment means so much to me. She didn't look up, but she didn't pull away either. I told her about staying up with her when she had nightmares, about showing up to every recital, about working extra shifts to afford field trips, about learning how to braid hair at midnight, about the nights I cried quietly after she went to bed, terrified I wasn't enough. I told her everything I had never said aloud. her eyes filled with tears. Mom, I never meant to hurt you. I know, I whispered, reaching across the table. And I'm not asking for much. I just want the walk down the aisle and the mother-daughter dance. Nothing else, no speeches, no spotlight, just those two things. She wiped her face, voice cracking. Nicole thinks you're being manipulative, she said. Dad said you're punishing him for the past. Punishing him for his choices, for his absence. The absurdity of it made my throat tighten. Emma, I said calmly, all I've ever wanted is for you to feel loved and supported. But love doesn't erase history. It coexists with it. She didn't respond. Her tears dripped into the foam of her latte, and for a moment, I believed we might finally reach understanding. But then she whispered something so soft I almost didn't catch it. Mom, Nicole is my best friend now. I don't want to ruin that. My heart cracked clean in half. Not because she said Nicole was her best friend, but because she said it like a confession, like something she'd been holding tightly, afraid of what it would cost. I sat perfectly still, letting the words settle, letting the pain settle. Emma looked at me with trembling eyes. I just want everyone to be happy, she whispered. And I understood suddenly, painfully. She wasn't choosing them over me. She was choosing peace over the truth, over herself, over us. If the conversation at the cafe was the emotional tremor, the family meeting Sarah demanded, the one she insisted would fix everything, was the earthquake. It started 2 days after Emma's confession. My phone rang mid-afternoon, and when I saw her name flash on the screen, Sarah, my stomach tightened. I answered anyway. Hello? Her voice was clipped, falsely polite. We need a family discussion, she said. This tension is hurting Emma. Keith and I will be over tomorrow evening. Keith. Of course he'd be there. The self-appointed sage of the modern blended family. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply said, fine, 6 o'clock. The moment the call ended, my heart began pounding. I needed backup. I called my sister Beth. The moment I finished explaining, she said, I'll be there before 6. Do not face them alone. Bless her. The living room, 6:12 p.m. Sarah arrived wearing confidence like perfume. Keith followed behind her with that smug, advisory posture he carried everywhere, chin lifted, chest forward, like he was preparing to deliver a TED Talk. Emma walked in last. She looked wrecked, eyes tired, shoulders slumped, makeup barely masking her stress. Seeing her like that nearly undid me, but I couldn't crumble now. We all took seats. The room felt too small, the air too thick. Sarah started speaking immediately. I think, she began with a diplomatic smile, that we should all strive for flexibility and compassion. This is a beautiful event, and we should be celebrating, not arguing. Beth sat beside me, arms crossed. Sarah continued. Emma wants both mothers walking her down the aisle. It's a modern tradition. And you, she gestured toward me, being stuck in the past isn't fair to her. Stuck in the past. Beth's chair creaked as she stiffened. I kept my voice calm. Sarah, the walk down the aisle is important to me. I raised Emma alone. Keith cut me off with a laugh. A laugh. Come on, he said, leaning back. I've been a positive influence in Emma's life for years now. People at the wedding know that. It makes sense to acknowledge it. Positive influence? Like arguing with waiters? Like hijacking her graduation party with karaoke? Like pushing himself into every milestone? I forced myself to breathe. I'm not denying your presence, I replied evenly. But I'm her mother, her only mother. Sarah's smile sharpened. Nicole has been more emotionally supportive than you lately. Emma's face crumpled. Mom, please, can we not? Beth stepped in. Enough, she snapped. You don't get to rewrite history, Sarah. She raised Emma. You visited. Sarah bristled. Keith exhaled dramatically, as if exhausted by our stupidity. Then Sarah pivoted. You brought up money, she said, voice icy. That was manipulative. Emma told us everything. Ah, there it was. The real accusation. I looked directly at Sarah. Fine, I said. Let's talk about money. I'm paying for the entire wedding. Every deposit, every detail. If you want equal footing, maybe you should contribute equally. A stillness fell over the room. Keith scoffed. We shouldn't have to buy our way into a family role. And yet, Beth said sweetly, you want to walk her down the aisle. Sarah lifted her chin. We're saving for our son's future. We can't be expected to provide financially for this. I blinked. Your son is 10, I said. College is 8 years away. Emma turned to her mother, eyes wide. Mom, you're saying you won't help at all? Not even a little? Sarah crossed her arms. We assumed she nodded at me, would cover everything. She's always been so controlling about these big events. I stared at her, speechless. Control? I'd been silently financing the dream wedding while she took emotional credit. Keith chimed in again, voice righteous. And honestly, your mom is putting you in an impossible situation. Asking about money that way? It was cruel. It was. Before he could finish, Beth stood. Not angrily, not dramatically, just with the quiet authority of someone who had been pushed 1 inch too far. Get out of her house, she said. Keith blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. You don't pay a cent. You don't take responsibility, but you want the spotlight? You want the aisle? You want to lecture the woman who did all the work? Get out. Sarah stood abruptly. This was orchestrated, she hissed, to embarrass me, to turn Emma against me. Emma cut in, voice trembling. Stop! The room froze. Emma's hands shook at her sides. Her breathing trembled. Just stop, she repeated. Please. Sarah softened instantly, using her gentlest tone. Honey, we're just trying to fix. No, Emma whispered. You're trying to win. Her mother's face fell. Emma turned toward the door, voice cracking. I need everyone to leave. Sarah tried to approach her, arms outstretched. Emma stepped back, physically recoiling. I'll call you in a few days, she said, shaking. Just go. And that was it. Sarah stormed out with Keith stumbling behind her, muttering insults under his breath. Beth stayed silent, offering a hand that Emma didn't take but didn't reject either. When the door clicked shut, Emma collapsed onto my couch, hands covering her face. I sat beside her quietly, not touching, not speaking, just waiting. After nearly an hour, she stood and whispered, I'm going home. I nodded. Okay. She walked out without looking back, and for the next 12 days, communication was sparse. Short texts, polite updates, nothing deeper. Not because she didn't love me, but because her entire reality had just cracked open, and she didn't yet know what would fall through. Ryan texted me during that time, too. He said Emma was withdrawn, unusually quiet, barely sleeping, and he was worried. So was I. Because families don't just break in one place, they fracture everywhere at once, and the fallout was only beginning. The strange thing about emotional devastation is how quietly it arrives. There wasn't a dramatic phone call, no slammed doors, no shouted accusations, just silence, thick, suffocating and slow, settling over my days like dust. Emma's short texts, I'm okay. Busy today. Talk later. Felt like automated responses, like she wasn't even typing them, just tapping something pre-programmed to keep me at a distance. I tried not to panic. I tried not to assume the worst. But mothers know. There was something collapsing inside her, and she was trying to hide the debris from everyone, including herself. Ryan's message confirmed it. Ryan, she's not sleeping. She's barely eating. I'm worried. Me, is she talking to her father? Ryan, I don't think she wants to, but he keeps calling. Nicole, too. Of course they did. People like Daniel and Nicole don't tolerate losing control. The night of the family meeting, they weren't just defending their place in the wedding. They were defending the narrative they'd built, one where they were the enlightened, compassionate parents of a modern blended family. And I was the unreasonable one, refusing to evolve. Emma stood at the center of that story like a spinning compass, unable to find true north. 12 days passed, and then she finally came over. The tired version of my daughter. She knocked softly, like she wasn't sure she should be there. When I opened the door, my heart clenched. Her face looked thinner. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion. Her posture was slumped, like her ribs were carrying weight instead of holding her up. I wanted to pull her into my arms, but I didn't know if that would break her or me. Hi, Mom, she whispered. Hi, sweetheart. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she had learned to read, where she did homework, where she once told me she wanted to be a veterinarian, a teacher, a singer, depending on the day. Now she sat there looking like someone had drained the light out of her. It took a long time for her to speak. Minutes of quiet ticking from the old wall clock. Minutes of her staring at her hands. Finally, she exhaled. Mom, she said softly. She won't stop calling me. She. Not my mother, not Sarah. She. She calls every morning, then again in the afternoon, and again at night, sometimes crying, sometimes angry. Emma rubbed her temples. I feel like I'm choosing between two parents, and whoever I don't choose loses their mind. I swallowed hard. Sweetheart, you're not responsible for her emotions. She says I'm breaking her heart, Emma whispered, that I'm being manipulated by you, that you've always resented her, that you're just trying to make this wedding about yourself because you've never let her be part of my life. The words hit me like blows, but they weren't new. Sarah had spent years rewriting the story to cast herself as the victim of my existence. What do you think? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emma shook her head helplessly. I don't know anymore. And then she started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quietly. Quiet crying is the most devastating kind. It means the pain has sunk deeper than the surface, into bone, into breath, into identity. I sat beside her but didn't touch her yet. She needed to speak before she could be held. Mom, she whispered, voice cracking, I feel like I'm hurting everyone. Dad keeps saying I'm disrespecting Nicole. Mom, Sarah, keeps saying I'm abandoning her. And Ryan says I'm letting them walk all over me. I don't know what to do. Her breath hitched. I hate this wedding, she choked out. I hate everything about it. My chest tightened. She had dreamed of this wedding since she was little, and now it was a source of torment. Guilt washed through me. Had I pushed too hard? Had I added to her suffering? Sweetheart, I whispered. I never wanted to be another person you had to manage. I never meant to add pressure. Emma shook her head. That's not it. You're the only one who actually cares about what I want. Everyone else is just claiming pieces of me. I reached for her hand then, slowly, gently. She let me hold it. Her fingers were cold. What do you want, Emma? Not what they want. Not what you think will keep the peace. You. What does your heart want? She stared at the table for a long time. Then she whispered something so soft it nearly disappeared. I want you to walk me down the aisle. The words should have relieved me, lifted the weight, soothed the wound. But they didn't, because she followed them with, I just don't know how to survive the fallout. There it was, the raw truth. This wasn't about the aisle. This wasn't about tradition or fairness or modern families. This was about Emma being emotionally cornered by a mother who loved conditionally, a father who used guilt as currency, and a stepmother who wanted credit she didn't earn. It was about loyalty ties wrapped so tightly they were cutting into her. And I knew then that the darkest moment wasn't mine. It was hers. My daughter was being torn apart by people who claimed to love her, and I was powerless to stop the tearing. All I could do was sit with her in the ruins, hold her cold hand, and promise myself that I would not add to the weight crushing her chest, even if it meant stepping back, even if it meant absorbing the blame, even if it meant being painted as the villain for a story I didn't write. Because that's what mothers do. We break in the dark so our children don't have to break alone. Turning points rarely announce themselves. They arrive quietly, in a phone call from an unknown number, in a confession from a stranger, in a truth too sharp to ignore. For Emma, the moment came 3 days after our conversation in the kitchen. I was folding laundry when my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen. Mom, she said the second I picked up, voice trembling. I need to come over. Something happened. 20 minutes later, she burst through my door, pale and shaking. A woman called me, she said. Someone named Jessica. My stomach tightened. I didn't know that name. But the way Emma said it, like it held weight, like it carried answers, made my pulse spike. She said she used to be engaged to Keith. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Engaged? I repeated slowly. Emma nodded, eyes wide, voice shaking with adrenaline. She said she and Keith had a wedding planned for October, the year he met Mom. My breath stopped in my throat. She said, Emma continued, the engagement ended in June, and Mom married Keith in December. The timeline hit like a mallet. So he was cheating, I whispered. Emma's voice cracked. Mom, Jessica said they were together for years. They had a house, a dog, wedding invitations printed, and then one day he came home, said he'd met someone new, and left. Someone new, Sarah, of course. Did she know Mom? I asked softly. Emma nodded, tears filling her eyes. She said Mom knew he was engaged, that they connected, and he told her he wasn't happy and was planning to leave anyway. My stomach turned. The exact script Sarah had used on me when she explained her own affair years earlier. We were unhappy. We connected emotionally before anything happened. You're overreacting. This was meant to be. It wasn't reinvention. It was repetition. Mom, Emma choked. I called her. I called Mom, and she admitted it. I closed my eyes. Of course she admitted it. Sarah always admitted the truth when cornered, because she was confident she could frame it as destiny, not betrayal. Emma wiped her face with her sleeve. And then she said I shouldn't let strangers poison me with bitterness. She said I didn't understand love yet. Anger surged in my chest, not hot or explosive, but cold and controlled. Sweetheart, I murmured, are you okay? No, she whispered, I'm not. She sat heavily at the table, burying her face in her hands. Mom, all this time I thought you were being too emotional. I thought Dad and Nicole were just trying to be included. I thought Mom was really trying to rebuild something with me, and now She broke off. Her shoulders shook. When she finally looked up, her eyes were different. Clearer, sharper, more certain. I think I've been manipulated for years. The words were soft, but they hit like thunder. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Mom, she whispered, I want you to walk me down the aisle. Just you. My breath caught, not with triumph, not with relief. With grief. With the weight of what she had to lose to arrive at that truth. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Are you sure? I asked gently. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm done letting them control everything. I'm done choosing peace at the cost of myself. That sentence, choosing peace at the cost of myself, made my throat tighten. She wasn't choosing sides. She was choosing herself. Mom, she continued, I need to set boundaries. I need to protect my mental health because I feel like I'm disappearing. I held her hand tighter. You won't disappear, I said softly, not while I'm here. She let out a shaky breath. I'm removing Mom and Nicole from the ceremony. No aisle, no special seating, no mentions. Keith isn't invited at all. I blinked, stunned by the decisiveness. And, Emma added, voice firm for the first time in weeks, if they want to be part of my life, they can start by respecting the word no. There it was, the turning point. Not loud, not dramatic, but powerful. This wasn't about the aisle anymore. This was about autonomy, about Emma reclaiming her voice, her boundaries, her story. For the first time in months, I felt hope, not for the wedding, not for the ceremony, but for my daughter's strength. She wasn't breaking. She was rebuilding. Brick by brick, truth by truth, choice by choice. And this time, she was choosing with clarity. Fallout never arrives politely. It doesn't knock. It doesn't wait for the right moment. It crashes down all at once, like glass hitting tile. And in the weeks leading up to the wedding, every piece of Sarah's carefully maintained narrative began to crack. The clean break. Emma's first step was simple. She stopped answering her mother's calls. At first, Sarah left soft, emotional voicemails. Honey, let's talk. I love you. We can fix this. Then they became pleading. Please don't shut me out. I'm your mother. Then accusatory. Your mom is turning you against me. You'll regret this. Then furious. If you want to throw away our relationship, that's your choice. Each message chipped away at the pedestal Emma had placed her mother on. Each message exposed more truth than Emma had ever been willing to see. And Keith, predictably, couldn't resist inserting himself. He sent her long, rambling texts about respecting parental figures and how he had been more of a father than some people ever were. When Emma showed me that message, her hands were shaking with anger, not fear. Mom, she said, voice tight, he's delusional. And for the first time, she wasn't saying it apologetically. She wasn't trying to defend them. She wasn't torn. She was done. Ryan's turning point. Ryan had been quiet for weeks, trying to stay out of family politics. But manipulation has a way of poisoning even the calmest waters. One afternoon, he told Emma, I'm watching your mother and Keith drain you, and I'm not going to let them take away your happiness or your relationship with your real family. Hearing that gave Emma something she hadn't had in a long time, permission to choose herself. Ryan became her grounding force, her mirror, her reminder that loyalty wasn't supposed to feel like suffocation. The moment everything snapped. Sarah's influence broke for good when she called Emma and said, if you want Keith to walk you down the aisle, I need you to agree to let us plan at least part of the ceremony. Emma went silent. Then, Mom, how much are you contributing financially? A long pause. Then deflection. Then circular excuses. Finally, maybe $1,000. The wedding was already close to $42,000. That was the moment Emma's face changed. Mom, she whispered, you expect to make decisions but not contribute? Why should you have the same role as the person who's paid for everything? Sarah hung up. Emma didn't call her back. The unraveling. Word spread quietly through extended family. Weddings always attract whispers, and the whispers were not flattering to Sarah. Everyone knew I was paying for the entire wedding. Everyone knew Daniel and Nicole weren't contributing a cent. Everyone knew Keith had been uninvited. And the more Sarah tried to justify herself, the more her story crumbled. She tried saying, she's punishing me. She's brainwashing Emma. She's jealous. But no one was buying it. Even people who never liked me were saying, if she wanted a role in the wedding, she should have shown up in her daughter's life earlier. The social tide shifted, subtly but unmistakably. Sarah wasn't the victim anymore. She was the architect of her own exclusion. The final boundary. Emma decided it herself. She removed her mother from every part of the ceremony. And no walk down the aisle. No special seating. No mention in the program. No speeches. No corsage. And Keith? Completely uninvited. When she told me, her voice didn't shake. I'm not punishing her, she said. I'm protecting myself. I felt an ache of both pride and grief. Because this wasn't just a wedding decision. It was Emma choosing who she wanted in her emotional front row and who she didn't. The unexpected ally. Ryan's mother, seeing the stress Emma was under, offered to help with her hair the day of the wedding. She deserves someone gentle, she told me quietly. Emma accepted. And that acceptance, small, practical, was a kind of reclamation too. It was choosing comfort over guilt, support over obligation. Sarah found out and sent a passive-aggressive text. I always planned to do your hair, but I see I've been replaced. Emma blocked her number. For the first time, she didn't spiral into guilt afterward. She looked at me with steady eyes and said, Mom, I'm done being managed. Cracks in their world. While Emma solidified her boundaries, Sarah's world began to wobble. Friends stopped taking her side. Keith grew bitter that he wasn't allowed at the wedding. Daniel, embarrassed by public perception, became distant from her too. And the more isolated Sarah became, the more desperate her attempts to regain control were. She sent a long letter to Emma about forgiveness and misunderstanding. Emma threw it away, half-read. She showed up at Emma's apartment. Ryan sent her away. She tried calling from different numbers. Blocked again. It was unraveling. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily, inevitably. Because Emma was no longer holding their world together with her guilt. She was holding up her own. The quiet before the wedding. Despite the chaos, the house felt calmer. Emma came over once a week for dinner, smiling more often than not. She talked about flowers, shoes, playlists, real wedding things, not emotional landmines. She wasn't completely healed. She still had moments of staring into nothing, moments when fear or sorrow flickered across her face. But she wasn't drowning anymore. She was swimming toward the surface. She was rebuilding herself. And she chose, actively, clearly, for me to be the one walking her down the aisle. One single sacred moment. A moment I had earned. A moment no amount of manipulation could take away. The morning of the wedding, the vineyard was wrapped in soft sunlight, that golden kind that makes everything feel gentler than it is. The air was cool, the sky clear, the kind of day you pray for but never dare expect. Emma was quiet on the drive there. Not sad, just steady, like someone who had crossed a long, painful bridge and finally reached solid ground. When I helped her step into her dress, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. Light. Not innocence, not certainty, just light. A quiet glow that comes after surviving something heavy. When the coordinator called us to the entrance of the ceremony space, Emma reached for my arm, not just to hold it, but to anchor herself. Mom, she whispered, I'm glad it's you. I didn't trust myself to speak. I simply nodded, letting the moment soak through every part of me. The doors opened, music swelled, everyone stood. And together, just the two of us, we walked. I felt her hand tremble once, then steady. I kept my breathing slow, matching hers, as sunlight spilled across the aisle and Ryan's tear-streaked face came into view. It wasn't the moment I imagined years ago. It was better, because we earned it. Every step was a reclamation. Not of the past, not of what was lost, but of what remained. The reception passed in a warm blur. Laughing guests, heartfelt speeches, a dance with my daughter I'll never forget. At one point, I noticed Sarah standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching us. Tears streamed down her face. She asked Emma to talk. Emma said softly, not today. And that was that. No scene, no spectacle, just a boundary held with grace. Sarah left quietly. Her absence didn't take anything from us. Her choices had already taken enough. Later that night, after the music softened and the lights dimmed, Emma hugged me. Mom, she whispered into my shoulder, thank you for being stubborn. I laughed wetly. If I wasn't, you'd be stuck walking down the aisle with Keith. She snorted. Even in her exhaustion, she could laugh about it. And that was healing. The lesson. When people say weddings reveal true family dynamics, they're right. But it's not because weddings create conflict. It's because weddings expose what was always there. Who shows up? Who only pretends to? Who supports you without conditions? Who weaponizes love to get their way? And who you become when forced to choose yourself. Emma learned all of that. Painfully, bravely, honestly. And I learned something too. You cannot protect your child from every heartbreak, but you can stand steady while they walk through the fire. Sometimes the strongest love is not rescuing them, but letting them discover their own strength and being the quiet, unwavering place they return to. In the end, I didn't just walk my daughter down the aisle. I walked beside her as she reclaimed her voice, her autonomy, her truth. And that Not the dress, not the venue, not the money, was the real dream fulfilled.